Hey, Mac, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I just want, before we get going, happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. What am I wearing? Green Junior Woodchuck Guidebook. And so, hey, Kidder, I hope you're having a nice St. Patrick's Day.
Hi, Kidder.
Um,
I don't
so,
own any green Marvel shirts, so I just figured I would wear one with the Hulk prominently featured. That's the closest I can say.
I believe he is green, at least most of the time. So, with that being said, you ready to talk some comics?
Yeah, let's get into this week's issues.
Okay, so we will start with Iron Man. It's been a while since we've read Iron Man.
Yeah, and I really like this this run, Christopher Cantwell's run here. Mostly, I love the art in these comics here. This one especially. I mean, this cover is beautiful. I just really like all of the artwork throughout this series.
Yeah, I do too. You know, I'm not usually typically Tony Stark goes into space fan.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think like taking a grounded hero and then sending him off into space is kind of defeats the point. But no, this has been I kind of felt like before the Iron Man 2020 run kind of got messed up with the whole COVID thing. So it's nice that they took a little bit of a fresh take. And a lot of roadie in my life lately, so
Yeah, I know. I agree. I like this simplified look at Tony. I mean, as simple as Tony Stark can be, right? It's still going to be pretty complicated, but yeah, no. Going from Iron Man 2020 and simplifying things back down to basically a reboot almost of the character. I've really enjoyed this as well. I will say I'm not crazy about the angle that's happening right now with Korvac has never really been one of my favorite characters. And then there's this complicated alternate reality sort of thing going on here too. So there's a lot to it. But again, I do really like the way this overall run has gone. So I would be happy to see how this plays out.
Speaking of roadie, not quite sure this has to wait. This falls into the whole. Most of the characters in this cover don't appear in this comic book.
Right. Yeah, another one that's it's a beautiful cover. I like the look of it a lot, but it's not very relevant to the contents of this issue.
But this is basically like it's not a story you often get in comic books, but it's Captain Marvel dealing with a breakup with Rhodey, which is not as simple as it sounds,
right?
And sort of being told to get back out there, like people do, and it's her story of getting back out there for better or for worse. Oftentimes worse, sometimes better.
Yeah, I think I'm going to surprise you here. This is my pick of the week. I never knew I wanted a rom-com about Carol Danvers, but that's what this is, and I loved every second of it. It was fantastic. It was really funny, but also had like plenty of action, plenty of Captain Marvel superhero stuff, even with some of the ridiculous enemies that she is fighting in this issue. So it was just really fun. I really enjoyed this issue.
I liked it too. It was definitely in the running, but it's nice to see. It's nice to see this kind of getting back a little bit to the Marvel style, where you see the heroes as people, which when you're dealing with galactic invasion, sometimes gets lost in the shuffle. So I really like this issue, and there's some great one-liners in it that I think
absolutely. Yeah, I love the group of characters that, we don't get these characters in the cover here, but we do get a really fun group of characters. I love Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman, and then L'Oreal, who we met really, I guess, right before Empire and got to know her a little bit more. And now she's, very comfortable with Captain Marvel and some of these other characters, and she's just really funny and entertaining as well. So yeah, it's just a really, and this is one that you don't have to know the entire story. They tell you everything that you need to know in this issue. So it's a self-contained story. So I definitely recommend picking this one up.
Going into King of Black, we've got S.W.O.R.D. And I don't know if it's just me or I've lost track of what was happening here. But it's basically this. I guess this is sort of the default X-Men King in Black title.
Yeah. So coming off of the Captain Marvel one, which was very simple and self-contained, this is the exact opposite. Goes off in 100 different directions. But yeah, no, it makes sense that you would have lost track of this. I believe this was one that we did, that Kyle and I did. One of the episodes you were out. But yeah, it ended with Cable, nullified Cable, and I thought there was going to be this big sort of overarching story. And it didn't really play out the way I expected. It went in a different direction, while also going in a lot of other directions. Like we talked about with S.W.O.R.D before, things are pretty complicated with Abigail Brand and the relationship of S.W.O.R.D to Krakoa, but also the rest of Earth. And there's a lot going on here. I feel like this almost fits in more with the mutant side of comics right now, as opposed to the King in Black side. I think that would provide more context as opposed to knowing the rest of the King in Black story.
That being said, though, I still enjoy this title. To me, I think because they're kind of removed a little bit from Krakoa, I still think it's a little bit more attainable than some of the more, in the weeds titles. But still, there's a lot going on referencing stuff that I only know because we read all that 10 of Swords. But
Right.
with Sinister and stuff. So it's. I really like this title, but this was probably my least favorite issue of this 4-issue run so far.
Yeah, I think I could agree with that. I would have to think back to some of the other issues. But yeah, no, I do. I like all of the stuff with Null. It always leads to some really awesome artwork and some cool action. There's a little bit of like nullified Krakoa, which is an awesome idea. So I really like that they did that. But yeah, I would agree that this is probably at the bottom for this run as far as this has gone so far.
Keeping the King in Black train going, we got 18 people who worked on this issue of King in Black, The Amazing Spider-Man, which it's a Spider-Man title, but it's more of a prelude to the Reptile series, who I fell in love with back in the Avengers Academy days. So he's a character I'm familiar with, and I every once in a while you have that story where it's this Spider-Man, Peter Parker sees the world through this lens, therefore it gets Spider-Man back to where he's supposed to be. That we've done that story hundreds of times, but it's still fun because sometimes you got to recenter Spider-Man. So I enjoyed this issue, even though and the character moments in it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I really like this issue. This was in the running for my pick of the week for sure. You're right. This is a Spidey story we've seen 100 times before, but it's great that Spider-Man can be used as sort of that building block for other characters, where they either look at him in any different way, but a lot of times as an inspiration for like some of the younger heroes, which is funny because Spider-Man was the kid growing up looking at like Captain America and Iron Man and all of them, and now he's on the other side of it. So it's nice. It's always nice when you get a story like that. Also, is that the pronunciation of the character? Because I've been saying reptile in my head this entire time. I 100% could be wrong. No idea.
It's a written medium. I don't know. I've just that's what my head said, but
yeah, I also thought it was interesting to see that Spider-Man is a character that is always, if not at the center, very close to it with these big crossover events and getting involved in this big overwhelming fight, and yet here he is embracing the fact that he can do more, helping people cross the street and get home safely, as opposed to taking on these giant symbiote dragons. So I like that he, kind of went in that direction here.
Though, that's a sort of struggle I think they have with Peter Parker sometimes. Is he's supposed to be the down on the luck Peter Parker, but he's an Avenger.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why at first he wasn't an Avenger. It didn't make sense. He wasn't part of the 18, but because he's Spider-Man, they made him an Avenger. And I think sometimes they go through a lot of storytelling hoops to make that make sense, because it's hard to imagine that there's not an Avenger that would help Peter Parker make his mortgage. But that happens all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. You're 100% right.
Okay, and if by my math we got one more title,
that math checks out.
Black Knight, Curse of the Ebony Blade, which kind of spins out of the Black Knight King in Black title we had a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of this one?
I really liked it. My only issue is that it comes down to the scheduling. I would have liked to see this come out after we were done with King in Black, so I could see what happens with Black Knight in King in Black and see, how the Ebony Blade is important to that overall story. But that being said, I did really like this issue. It was hilarious. I did not expect that at all. Dane Whitman is a fascinating character and just really, really funny. Very different angle to him from any other Avenger you've seen. And I think this is a story fans are going to want to pick up to learn about the character before seeing him on the big screen in Eternals when Black Knight joins the MCU. So, I think, I really like this issue. It's a great start to this new run. And I think this should be one that fans pick up in the future.
Yeah, this is my pick of the week, obviously. And I think it's more just because it was such a surprise. The King in Black title had a little bit of it, but, sometimes these sort of Merlin-esque stories get a little too Thor-y for me, like, in the weeds. But he's such a broken character that, like, he's not a god. He's just trying to get through it. And then there's some great humor in it too. Great mystery. Like, I don't know where this is going, but I'm looking forward to finding out. So I surprised me. If you had to show me a list of the comics and you said, hey, guess which one's going to be your pick of the week, I wouldn't have picked this one.
Right.
But it ended up being my pick of the week.
I was a little bit thrown off when the sort of title page showed up halfway through the issue. That threw me for a loop for a second because I was wondering how long I had been reading.
Right. I actually checked because, like, I read it digitally, so it does the sort of follows the panels. So sometimes you don't know what part of the page or how much is taking it. So
right.
I went and I clicked and I was like, how far am I in this issue? Back and it was like 13 pages in or something, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it was a little weird, but other than that, it was a really enjoyable issue. Definitely liked it.
So I want to talk a little bit about Assembled, about the making of WandaVision. What was your take on it?
I enjoyed it. My only thing that I would have liked to see more, there was, and I mentioned this on Marvel Monday, but we got to hear from Robert Lopez and Kristen Anderson Lopez about writing the music, and yet they never brought up Agatha All Along, which was unfortunate. I would have liked to hear them talk about the making of that song. The other thing was, and Elizabeth Olsen kind of threw us a little jab with a quote about this, but they never really got into, talking about what fan theories might have come about and how they kind of played with that. Now, a lot of it was probably unintentional in the end, but Elizabeth Olsen did kind of mention, like, oh, it's going to be fun to see how fans try to stay a step ahead of us and how impossible that's going to be. So I thought that was really funny, but I would have liked to dive into that topic a little bit more. But aside from that, I really,
this was obviously produced before, most, I don't know where in the process, but definitely before the last couple episodes were aired or streamed or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so, I kind of wanted to see the postmortem after the postmortem, as opposed to it's more of like an EPK of like what you would tease to get before the show. Mm-hmm. Not at Marvel, but like typically it's not so much of like, here's how fans reacted, here's what we were thinking. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I think would be more interesting at this point, but obviously not realistic. So I kind of hope they kind of almost circle back again and be like, because I'm really curious to know, like, how did COVID impact this? It's not something is right in the middle of it. So I have lots of questions. It's not. I think the Disney Gallery show, by nature that it aired significantly, or not, after, mm-hmm. We kind of knew what was going on. And granted, this is the first Marvel show, so I don't know how they. Kevin Feige, when promoting Falcon and Winter Soldier, kind of said, like, yeah, we didn't see this coming. There's certain things that surprised him, like the obsession with the astrophysicist.
Right.
But still fun, still a good show. Good to see Blue Vision. And worth your time.
Yeah, absolutely. So all you're saying now, though, is we need a talking WandaVision. show to recap everything afterwards. That would be a lot of fun. Pretty
yeah,
cool.
that'd be, yeah, you're right. Like almost like a live, quasi-live sort of post show would be cool.
Yeah.
So I got it. You've seen the Falcon and the Winter Soldier first episode?
Yeah.
So I know you can't review it.
Yeah, hang on. Let me take about 30 minutes to explain everything that happens in that episode, starting now. No, it's good. I'm excited for it. I can't wait to see more. It's killing me that, I have to wait another week for episode 2 to get something new here. But no, it's very good. I guess I expected to see a little bit more, but that could just be me. And hopefully this 6 episodes is enough to get everything that I want out of this story. I'm really excited for it. I can't wait.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the pacing. WandaVision was 9 episodes, and it'll be interesting to see how they pace the story out over 6 episodes. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm very curious to see how that works out, and what the reasoning was for the longer run times but fewer episodes, and how this all comes together.
Although I don't believe it has a huge runtime.
No, but if you go back to the first episode of WandaVision, which was, I think, just barely over a half hour, maybe like 32 minutes or something like that. And this one is about 15 minutes longer than that. So given that WandaVision got longer as we went on, for the most part, there were a couple up and downs. But, I would expect a similar kind of thing. Probably not. I'm not expecting to see Falcon and the Winter Soldier exceed an hour at any point. But I think we'll creep closer to it as we go on.
So, speaking of MCU news, Avatar was re-released in China. That's not MCU news, but Marvel Studios did congratulate our friend James Cameron with a little nod. It's become somewhat of a tradition that whatever movie takes the box office crown recognizes the movie that had it before. Lately, those are all Disney movies, so it makes it a little easier from a corporate standpoint. But
right. Yeah. I'm just counting down the days until we can see Endgame in theaters again, because it's got to be coming, right?
Maybe, but man, who's got that kind of time? Then we got word that Kingsley Ben-Adir will be playing the villain, presumably in Secret Invasion.
Yeah, this was a piece of casting news that it got me excited, not necessarily because I'm not super familiar with the actor. I've heard him in name only, really. So I'm not familiar with his work, but just the fact that casting news was announced or reported for Secret Invasion, and that just feels like it's so far down the line still. We have so many other projects coming up before that. So the fact that we heard this news got me really excited. I can't wait to see what we get out of Secret Invasion. I'm curious to know who he is playing, if he is in fact playing a villain. I wouldn't have guessed there would be a male villain in the lead of this story. So we'll have to see how that goes and how much changes from the comic book story.
I have lots of questions, but I almost don't want it spoiled, so I'm not going to ask them.
Right.
On the merch front, Lego is having a special target. They've been doing these bus, Lego bus things. And so the latest one's Carnage. So you can build a Carnage bust. I love Marvel. I don't know that I would pick this up because it's really not what I want staring at me.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm not a huge collector of Lego, but I am a huge fan of anything symbiote. So this is a possible purchase for me in the near future.
Anyway, getting to comics, we've got news that a new series coming out of spinning out of the Immortal Hulk, Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk, which I don't read. I've heard it's great. I just hasn't been on my radar. But a Gamma Flight will be coming presumably this June. June 23rd. So that they're a team, but their job is to get the Hulk. So
yeah, and I love this concept. I love that you're putting these unique characters together. I mean, coming from all different angles, really, all different relationships to Bruce Banner and the Hulk, like Rick Jones. But then you also have Absorbing Man. So, I mean, it's this crazy team of characters coming together that I think this issue is just going to be a lot of fun. I have a feeling this will be like a Thunderbolts-esque kind of team. So it should be a very entertaining series.
And a fun play on Alpha Flight.
Yes, absolutely.
And then, somewhat speaking of Alpha Flight, Marvel is continuing their voices line of comic books that showcase diverse voices, such as the Indigenous comic and Legacy, with a Pride comic coming out for Pride Month. And I will get to the cover, but
yeah, this is cool because of some of the different characters this will be talking about, including Mystique and Destiny, Nico and Carolina, and then Iceman, Daken, and Karma, and more too. So again,
more.
Yeah, of course. There's always and more, right? So it's gonna be fun to see all of those different characters and get a story, as a tribute to Pride, which is really cool.
It's funny to think of, back in the day, it was just like North Star was the one.
Right.
Such a much more diverse lineup. I mean, we got Doc in here in the cover, Nico. Who's this big one over here? The Valkyrie, it looks like.
Yeah. That is, it's honestly, it's so hard to keep track of the Valkyries at this point. There's so many of them now. I remember there just being one, and her name was Val. So it's hard to keep track of them.
So that's also on my list. What you got?
Well, listen, for anyone from Marvel who is listening, in this issue of Captain Marvel, she is wearing a Jeff the Landshark shirt, and I will buy it. Just put it out there. I will own it as soon as possible.
He recently made an appearance in Deadpool, right? Like the last run.
Yeah, he's in that King in Black tie-in. He is basically Deadpool's pet at this point, and just my favorite Marvel character.
Well, that's great. As I said, we're counting down the days till Friday morning. Your review goes up Thursday, so tomorrow.
Tomorrow morning, yeah.
So, you can see what Mac thinks about Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then you'll continue Marvel Mondays through that next 6 weeks plus one, and we will see what's in store. Yeah.
Also, Zacks of Life will be coming back after a week off, so we'll be breaking down Falcon and the Winter Soldier, of course.
Who's your guest? Always my question.
Guest this week is going to be Cole. Who's coming back again to do another sports-themed draft, given that March Madness is this week. So, you can probably piece together what that draft will be.
I look forward to it, and I look forward to sharing my picks next week, just because I'm self-centered like that. Anyway, happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. We will be back at 7:30 with our weekly news video. So check that out, and including the reopening of Disneyland. Adventures Campus.
Was there any news to talk about today? I didn't think anything happened. All right.
It's every day. Well, thanks so much, everybody.
Bye.